What's up, it's ENDYMION, and when you thought it couldn't get more dumb, these companies find a way to keep one-upping themselves time and again. From Baldur's Gate's parent company hiring consulting agents to change problematic words, George R.R. Martin clowning on idiots, and games journalists getting salty that YouTubers are eating into their market share according to them. This video is going to be full of stupidity, so let's just jump into the diarrhea soup and find out what's happening. Firstly, from Wargamer, we have this article titled, "New Dungeons & Dragons book reviews old language with inclusivity consultants." Yeah, you heard that right. Now Wizards of the Coast, which owns Dungeons & Dragons, which obviously Baldur's Gate is a part of, is now going back to rewrite and change problematic words they deem unfit for the modern audience. These changes are being presented in Wizards' newest book called The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons, and they are going out of their way to police and change things they feel no longer represent the company. And need I remind you that D&D is about as woke as it gets, and Wizards of the Coast has done all kinds of things in the past, like turning their characters into other races. Like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, who's now black, and more. In a press release, senior game designer Jason Tondro said that Wizards specifically went to find consultants to help them identify any problematic phrases, words, and concepts within their franchises, and then help them change it. According to Jason Tondro, the goal here was to address the problematic aspects of D&D and change them so they don't offend their global modern audience. He had some more to say, and I quote, "We do address this stuff in the book directly. We hired inclusivity consultants because we wanted to know what we were in for and we wanted to call it out. We couldn't change it because it's history, so we included this material while calling it out and placing it in a historical context." End quote. What Wizards of the Coast means by this is they are going back to change things to fit woke ideals, and whatever they can't realistically change, they're basically putting trigger warning labels similar to what Crystal Dynamics did recently with the Tomb Raider remasters. You know that screen that says how we don't believe in the old ways of the franchise, we acknowledge it's problematic, but we left it alone because that's how the games were while also profiting off of all of it? Yeah, basically that. Pointless virtue signaling like always. They're getting your money because you want to play the old stuff, but they're covering their butt cheeks from criticism by their colleagues by including stuff like that. It's all really dumb. This new book will cover the history of D&D from 1970 to 1976, and it's around 500 pages long. And Wizards confirms every word has been combed over tirelessly to make sure everything that was said in this book from decades ago adheres to the socio-political climate of today. And you're likely wondering, well, what are some words that were changed and why? Wargamer doesn't give any examples per se, however, FandomPulse.com did have some examples of the words changed. Although, we don't know the full extent until this releases on June 18th, but one of these changes comes to the Magic the Gathering card game, and what certain terms are invoking. For example, the term Totem Armor will now be called Umbra Armor. The reasoning for this is because Totem invokes that shaman-like classes are culturally appropriating shamanistic activity in other cultures. Which already doesn't make any sense because that's literally what shamans are. They're spiritual, mage-like characters in every facet of any property. Does Wizards think the term totem is racist because it is some form of cultural appropriation in their eyes? But towards who exactly is my question? Native Americans, I guess, but that's literally what shamans are, right? They talk to spirits and such, that's their whole shtick. Changing that to umbral armor seems kind of stupid. I mean, umbral means dark or shadow. Isn't that kind of more racist? That you're now attuning the concept of shamans who are usually tied to cultures like Native American or African cultures, and instead are using a term like totem, which is a big wooden sculpture. You're now using umbral, which is just meaning black. Isn't that more offensive to black shaman tribes than totem? Am I in the wrong here? I don't think so, but let me know. If anything, umbral is more offensive than totem is. You should have used something like spirit armor, I guess, or mana armor. I don't know. Umbral is actually worse the more I think about it now. Another term they're changing for the modern audience is tribal, which will now be referred to as kindred, which just means the same thing anyways. Tribal was used to refer to types of cards that were from different, well, tribes for lack of a better word. You know, stuff like goblins and such are considered tribal because obviously these creatures come from the same tribe. Like, I don't know how else to explain it because it's common sense at this point. Kindred literally just means family, which is basically what a tribe is anyways. So they just changed the name of tribal to mean the same thing because I guess tribal is also racist now? My only assumption would be again because tribal is somehow offensive to Native American or African cultures, but I mean not really because tribes are a real thing and there's nothing wrong with it as a term. Honestly, this just kind of reminds me of when certain woke activists got mad about orcs in fantasy settings, saying that they were just fantasy versions of black people. By the way, this is a real discussion that many websites and articles have talked about. They genuinely believe that orcs are basically fantasy black people and they don't realize how racist that is. Like this article from comicbook.com back in 2020 showing you how far back this goes, they complain that orcs are racist depictions of black people. Here's but a piece of their reasoning behind this, and I quote, "A 2016 passage from a Dungeons & Dragons rules book has fans once again talking about a long-standing problem with how orcs are depicted in the tabletop game and other pieces of fantasy lore. The conversation started when Quinn Welsh Wilson criticized a passage found in Volo's Guide to Monsters that noted that orcs could only develop a limited capacity for empathy, love, and compassion. Welsh Wilson prefaced their post with a casual racism trigger warning which set off a heated debate over how orcs and other fantasy races are depicted in modern fantasy tales. While orcs have their roots in goblins and other fairy tale creatures, the modern concept of orcs in tabletop games largely originates from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. As depicted in Lord of the Rings, orcs are inherently evil humanoid creatures, and Tolkien described them in a letter as degraded and repulsive versions of the to Europeans least lovely Mongol types. Coupled with the fact that Tolkien depicted entire cultures as being representative of good or evil, many viewed orcs as a reflection of the other, a philosophical concept used to paint entire cultures as being somehow inferior or evil because they were different. Now Tolkien noted in other letters that orcs were not meant to be representative of a particular culture or people, and that orcs could be found on both sides of any conflict along with genuinely good people. However, his depiction of orc culture as a monolithic society of evil human-like creatures became a standard element in epic fantasy. Over time, various artists and authors used elements of various real-world, non-European cultures when depicting orcs in books and other media, thus solidifying the idea that orcs were a reflection of non-European races, which is incredibly problematic. Many people see games like Dungeons & Dragons as codifying and normalizing the use of racial stereotypes, which leads to both racist situations in the gaming table and encourages racist attitudes getting adopted by some players. For instance, a player using the orc race found in Volo's Guide to Monsters means that they take a -1 penalty to their intelligence score, which means that the smartest level 1 orc will always be less intelligent than the smartest level 1 human. When translated to real-world discussions about races and cultures, it can be easily argued that this pushes an incredibly racist and outdated viewpoint." End quote. As you can see, this weird woke revisionist history outlook at fantasy has been happening for quite some time now, and the fact they even say themselves that Tolkien never explicitly stated that orcs are black people shows you that it's not Tolkien who was racist, but in fact it's the woke weirdos themselves who read the author's works and immediately in their heads made their own connections between black people and orcs. Nobody looks at an orc and sees black people, all we see is an orc. The way I always looked at it was that the human race in fantasy was meant to be all of us because we're all human. I mean, duh, but it's sad I need to point this out to clarify it in the first place. Then outside of humans, which are all kinds of colors and whatnot, then you had your other races, your goblins, your orcs, mermaids, whatever, dragons too. None of these are meant to be depictions of other humans because humans are already their own race and class in D&D and Lord of the Rings. I can't believe that I need to explain this, but if anything, it shows that these people are far more racist than they think they are. Because for them, they see everything through the eyes of race when it comes to media. The fact this comicbook.com writer unironically said when they looked at orcs' negative intelligence score, they somehow correlated that to black people. I mean, dude, come on now. You just said it in your own article that you think black people are dumber than other kinds of people. Like you said that, right here. Look, I'll even put it on screen so you can read it. These people think they're the heroes, when in reality, they're the racist ones themselves. You can't make that up, dude. And then this other change kinda just proves my point that these consulting weirdos are just racist themselves. They changed the subtype Naga to now be Snake instead. If you've played any RPG ever, you've fought enemies called Naga before. They're even defined as a member of a race of spirits recognized in Hinduism and Buddhism that have mingled superhuman and serpent qualities, are genii of waters and rain and live in a subaqueous kingdom. That's not racist to depict Naga as they are described. I mean, they're literally classified like this by their religious connotations. Reducing Nagas to just snakes is actually more problematic because snakes in terms of symbology are often looked at as villainous, betrayers, or conniving. D&D just took a religious concept and then they reduced it by turning it into an evil sub-creature type instead. Nagas are not fully snakes, like come on man, who are these consulting agencies that they're hiring? Because Wizards might want their money back after seeing some of the changes that they're making. Everything they've done so far is clearly just making the terms even worse. They're obviously just doing this to appease minority groups, but all it ends up doing is removing the uniqueness of these concepts and then replacing them with far more problematic or racist terms instead. You literally turn shamans into black shadow people, Nagas into snakes, and then just made tribal mean family, which changes nothing. Like, changing tribal to kindred is akin to calling someone a dumbass instead of an idiot. Like, they're still a dumbass if you call them an idiot. They mean the same thing. Like, what are we even doing here, Wizards? Even George R.R. Martin, the guy who made Game of Thrones, thinks none of this is helping. From that Park Place, we got this one titled. George R.R. Martin blasts Hollywood screenwriters and producers for believing they can improve source material, they make it worse. George blasted producers who have been ruining things like Stan Lee's work, which is Marvel Comics, Ian Fleming, who made James Bond, and Tolkien, who of course did Lord of the Rings, as in he's directly talking about Wizards of the Coast. George recently said this via a blog, and I quote, "Everywhere you look, there are more screenwriters and producers eager to take great stories and make them their own. It does not seem to matter whether the source material was written by Stan Lee, Charles Dickens, Ian Fleming, Roald Dahl, Ursula K. Le Guin, J.R.R. Tolkien, Mark Twain, Raymond Chandler, Jane Austen, or, well, anyone. No matter how major a writer is, no matter how great the book, there's always seems to be someone on hand who thinks he can do better, eager to take the story and improve on it. The book is the book, the film is the film, they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better though. 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. Once in a while though, we do get a really good adaptation of a really good book, and when that happens, it deserves applause. I came across one of those instances recently when I binged the new FX version of Shogun. I think the author would have been pleased. Both old and new screenwriters did honor to the source material and gave us terrific adaptations, resisting the impulse to make it their own. How faithful do you have to be? Some people don't feel that they have to be faithful at all. That's this phrase that goes around, I'm going to make it my own. I hate that phrase. There are changes that you have to make or that you're called upon to make that I think are legitimate, and then there are others that are not legitimate. End quote. And I mean, George is right. We clearly saw what happened when the show's producers ran out of Game of Thrones books to adapt and they kind of went their own way. Because it immediately turned into shit almost instantly. The Witcher Netflix is also a prime example of Hollywood types thinking that they know better than the fans or creator. And all you really end up with is a bad product made for nobody that alienates the people you're supposed to be trying to attract with your product in the first place. There's nothing good that ever comes out of this, and it's incredible how it just keeps happening time and again. Sure, sometimes we get lucky with like One Piece at Netflix, which to this day, I have no idea how the hell they managed to do all of that, but couldn't do Witcher, but they did it somehow. In most other instances though, it's just a bunch of stubborn creators thinking that they know better than anyone else. And then when it doesn't work, it's never their faults, it's the fans for being too rigid and religious to the source material. The very same source that without it, your stupid adaptation wouldn't exist at all to begin with. I don't know if you can tell, but I am mad salty to this day that The Witcher's adaptation ended up sucking ass, man. That could have become the next Game of Thrones if they didn't hire activist morons. We were so close to having a great Witcher show, but now we'll probably get another Witcher show in maybe 15 years or something. By then I'll be 47 years old. My god, my bones will be creaking and my back will be exploding every time I get off the couch. We just can't have nice things, can we? And this next and final story for this video is a combo of things with this article titled, Bloomberg video game reporter Cecilia D'Anastasio bemoans YouTubers eating away at journalism's mindshare. To sum it up quickly, this Cecilia lady works for Bloomberg and she hates YouTubers. After IGN's parent company bought up a bunch of gaming news websites, layoffs started to happen at those websites. Cecilia was angry because people she knew were fired due to the absorption by IGN, which she has every right to vent her frustrations about. She then decided to say this, a strong games press is especially important as the lines blur between gaming and social media big tech. There are so many stories to write, these senseless layoffs are especially painful as reactionary YouTubers with no journalism training eat away at journalism's mindshare. So she's talking about people like me who are kind of taking over her job, and I mean, well, yeah, I guess I am, but you should be asking yourself why journalists have lost so much credibility and who's to blame for that. She'll likely say it's because of me and others, but it's actually the journalists themselves who are to blame. They ruined their own reputations and they're angry they no longer wield the power they did in the early to mid 2010s compared to now. And it's simple, you all stopped actually doing your jobs and just said it's the readers and fans who are at fault. You pretty much radicalized an entire online group of millions of people into never trusting you again. This then leads to another story where Second Wind's editor-in-chief Nick Calandra, the same guy who doxed Grums a week ago, is now at war with Smash JT, a YouTuber who made a website called Kotaku Detected. That article from that Park Place is titled Kotaku Detected Website Reinstated Despite Second Wind editor Nick Calandra organizing to shut it down. So in case you don't know, Smash JT was in a battle with Alyssa Mercanti of Kotaku, the failed cam girl who turned woke journalist over there. Anyway, this led to Smash creating a website similar to Kabrutus for Sweet Baby Games, and it compiled the names of the people who worked at Kotaku and which websites they work at now. Some said this was illegal, but not really because they're journalists and their names are public in every article that they write. This led to Nick Calandra, who works at the YouTube channel Second Wind, which came to fruition after the Escapists fell apart, and he used his followers to mass report the website, which caused it to be shut down by Wix.com, which is a company that helps people create their websites and maintain them. Since then, Smash has managed to get the website up and running again. And now Nick Calandra of Second Wind has said that he's working to get it taken down again. Here's what he said via Twitter. As it was rightfully pointed out to me, and he is refusing to take down the page, has continued to add more names to it. It needs to be taken down, so please continue reporting to Wix as I'm still waiting for their response. Just so Nick knows, it's not illegal to compile information on public figures, as I'm sure his site has done the same with people like myself and others too. And I think it's very weird and shady that these journalists who either work at Kotaku or other places don't want their work to be known or compiled. Since if you are a journalist, isn't the entire point of your profession to create articles and generate discussion to get ad revenue for wherever you're working at? Wouldn't you want people to read what you write? The only reason you don't is because you know your work can be easily dismantled using common sense and people will find out that you're a hack. There's literally no other reason. And maybe they think if by using this website, people will realize someone on another website used to work at Kotaku, and that will somehow impact their ad revenue and views. But that just confirms that the past matters. Look, I don't really care about the people at Kotaku. I don't know Smash JT, and Nick Calandra already hates me, which is fine, but I gotta ask, man. These people just end up making themselves more known by trying to fight back against this. If you just let this Kotaku website sit there, I mean, sure, it could do some damage, but now that you're trying to take it down, you just signal boosted it like 10 times to more people now. I didn't even know about this until pretty much right now, so congrats to Nick and Alyssa, you played yourselves, again. I don't know how some people can manage so many cell phones, but hey, that's what happens when you do stuff like this. You're playing stupid games, so you win stupid prizes. You could have just ignored Smash, but you didn't. And this circles back to that Cecilia lady from Bloomberg 2, YouTubers wouldn't be eating into your market share if you just told the truth and didn't push agendas 24/7. You're just mad because you got caught being liars, and that's really all this is. Too long didn't read version, you played yourselves. All this pointless virtue signaling, and for what exactly? Nothing. It's just like the Baldur's Gate D&D stuff. You change things to not be racist, but all you ended up doing was making it even more racist somehow. I would say it's funny, but it's getting sad at this point. Don't harass these people, because like I've said before, these guys self-own themselves far more often than anything else all on their own. So all of you watching, just enjoy your lives, go have fun, and I trust you, these people will keep stepping on rakes all by themselves. You don't have to do anything. As for D&D, they've lost so much money and had so many layoffs, the fact that they're still doubling and tripling down at this point, they deserve whatever failures they got coming. Like Warhammer as well, these companies are just committing financial self-deletion at this point. But anyway, as always, let me know what you think, subscribe, like, and share, and thanks to my patrons for their support. There's quite a few of you now, and if you want to talk in our Discord, you can sign up, and we play stuff like Helldivers and Fortnite together. Probably going to play Destiny 2 together coming up here real soon too. As always, have a great day everybody, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one.